share my camera.
Okay. Well, until Nebojsa shares his camera, I should say that he's a very, very old friend, and it's a pity that I cannot see you in person this year. Nebojsa is the director of the University-wide Languages program at the University of Cambridge, United Kingdom. He received his PhD in creative writing and literacy self-translation from the University of East Anglia, Norwich, UK. And his academic interest ranges from the methodology of language teaching in blended and distance modes of delivery, teacher training, online resources, design and development, etc. And now we are all ears to listen to your fruitful speech.
Very well, thank you, Roya. It's a pleasure being here, so to say, at least online. I think what we are going to do is, Matteo, you will be playing my presentation, right? Okay. I will be talking today about the project that we started in May, June 2020. And it's the World University's response to COVID-19, remote online language teaching. So that is the topic of my today's presentation. So there is a project, and the product of that project was a publication, a collection of studies from colleagues from around the world. Next slide, please. Okay, I can do that. I will give you first a brief outline of the project, talk about the aims, tell you what were the research questions. I will tell you about the participants. I will highlight some interesting points when it comes to the findings, and then I will conclude with a question, as it happens these days. So, project outline. The project looked at the emergency period, March to July 2020. We all know what happened back then, so I won't waste my time to remind you. So, we were all in emergency, and this collection brings together 24 case studies from 35 contributors. They come from 22 universities, 19 countries, 5 continents. On top of that, we had 15 external reviewers, so that each paper, each study was reviewed by 3 people. So it was quite a rigorous process. The editorial team consisted of myself, Professor Atabiekova of Rudin University, Moscow, Professor Maria Fredi of the University of Pavia, and Professor Josef Schmid of the University of Chemnitz in Germany. We received financial support by my university in Cambridge and by the Rudin in Moscow. The publisher was researchpublishing.net, and the collection was published in May 21. It is available online. I will just say immediately, I hope that many of you or all of you will, after my presentation, just go online and have a look at it and download it and make good use of this useful resource. These are our partners. These are universities that took part in the project. So you can have a look for yourself. You might be able to find your own university here, or colleagues, or someone from your country. So as you see, all 5 continents were represented, and it was a really great pleasure and a great intercultural experience, if you like, to collaborate with all these people on a common goal. So this is a peer-reviewed and externally reviewed collection of case studies. It analyzes the nature of different educational responses to lockdown measures, describes and evaluates the deployment of technology in remote language teaching, discusses methodological issues, evaluates resources, teacher training, support, as well as student accessibility issues, discusses the relevant managerial challenges, of course. The aim of this project is to document the higher education pedagogical responses to the COVID-19 emergency. bring together international language teaching professionals around a common pedagogical platform. So this would be beyond the collection per se. Our goal was to open the communication lines and start networking with colleagues around the world. Then to encourage active and meaningful global networking, as I just said, to trace the path to a range of flexible and diverse approaches to language teaching and learning, to sketch a proposal for a new language teaching paradigm. As we have heard this morning from Professor Pace, the future will not look exactly like the past. So we know that, and we are getting ready for it. All the papers, all the studies in the collection have a common structure. So we wanted to make them comparable. So first, they start with describing the institutional, cultural, and academic background, what type of course they're talking about, usual and emergency delivery patterns, technology deployed, teacher training and support, student and teaching staff feedback, teaching learning outcomes, discussion, lesson learned, limitations, conclusions, and the way forward. So that would be your common structure of all 24 papers. Here are our research questions. One, there are 8 of those. What was the decision-making process like in shifting to remote online teaching? Were the changes implemented in top-down or bottom-up fashion? Technology, administration, or pedagogy? Which was the driving force for change? And predictably, responses to the emergency vary depending on the specific context. However, is it possible to discern some patterns emerging? 4. How have teachers managed to maintain or include interactive elements in their teaching? 5. How learner-centered was the switch to remote online teaching? How were task-based approaches included in remote online teaching? To what extent was the process of moving to remote online teaching able to cater for the diversity of the student body? What methodological developments did we record? Okay, so the aim of the project was to document these issues, highlight salient points. There were some interesting, of course, as I mentioned, intercultural aspects. There were 35 colleagues in the project and 3 different teams from Arabic countries, 2 from Egypt, for instance, the American University in Cairo and the University of Alexandria, and a colleague from Qatar. But all 3 asked me to talk about the project online face-to-face. So no one else out of the 35 participants asked for a face-to-face conversation. And I thought that was a culturally very interesting point. A university in Iran reported that they rang all 15,000 students to apologize for the inconvenience and to offer some support and guideline to console them and offer support and guidelines how to study from home. So this university rang they telephoned 15,000 people, which is amazing. One institution held emergency meeting at highest level and cascaded way forward rules, regulations, and funds. So this was, for instance, completely top down. So a small group of people upstairs decided what the rest of the university would do. Teaching different language in different settings to diverse student populations. So that was a common thread. The diversity that is shown throughout these 24 studies. Some managerial aspects were quite interesting because we had people who are teachers of one course, let's say junior colleagues. We had coordinators of languages, directors of whole programs, and university level policymakers. So there is quite a variety of kind of professional backgrounds. Some key concepts that we use and highlight, and we explain in the opening study written by the editors, we go into quite some detail into making clear, defining these categories, key concepts. remote, online, blended learning. What do we mean by blended learning exactly? Flipped classroom, hybrid teaching. What is hybrid teaching today? What was hybrid teaching 15 years ago? It was two different things. If you look at theory and synchronous versus asynchronous teaching, learning. I will just give you now an overview of some of the findings, a brief overview of the findings. The collection is 460 pages, 24 studies, so you can imagine that this is very brief. So I hope you will go and consult the whole collection yourself. Each chapter explored the use of technology. This angle stands in line with the project rationale that focuses on remote online language teaching. What seems genuinely relevant for the contemporary landscape is that every author examines concrete tools for content delivery, student self-study and assessment issues. Okay, this was not a theoretical exercise. We had students in front of us and we have a problem to solve, and we did. The authors are unanimous in prioritizing the human factor and pedagogy that are considered the driving force to tailor the learning process to the remote context, to customize the technology to diverse student body in terms of social, cultural, and academic background. Online remote language teaching during the COVID-19 pandemic has enforced the overall university community focus on language as a social practice. Highlighted is the critical importance of the teachers' and students' human side, their interaction. Authors underline the importance of content adaptation, the specifics of course delivery and implementation due to various learning activities. The data reveals the ongoing adaptation of formative assessment to new contexts, the increasing role of teachers and students' feedback. Following the pandemic, the digital and face-to-face modalities will coexist and move beyond traditional institutional curriculum boundaries. Although learner-centered approaches are extremely important in modern foreign language teaching, they were explicitly mentioned only rarely. I say here explicitly, they were mentioned implicitly, but not explicitly. No one in those 24 studies referred explicitly to learner-centered approaches. Thus, a lot of the group work and breakout room discussions can be included in this perspective. The problems mentioned with reference to breakout rooms, however, are not more dramatic than in similar face-to-face activities, and moving from a digital breakout room to another may even be easier and more effective. The possibility to record group discussions more easily are discussed as a central element of learning in several contributions. Form and/or tools used. The diversity of the student body is emphasized by the online shift is apparent in all the studies. Diverse teaching approaches were used depending on primarily level of study, undergraduate, graduate, postgraduate, class size ranging from small seminar to large lecture, and course objectives, for instance, general language or language for specific purposes. Combined with the online mode, these traditional pedagogical distinctions brought about improved patterns of interaction, as different ways of managing interaction were experimented with depending on the level of study, class size, and course objective. Another evident development is what we could call the shift from unintentionally blended language teaching, because we had to do it, right? It was emergency, so we had to shift quickly some of our materials online in digital format, to learning to blended by design. So blended learning by design is a different situation. That is probably what most of us are doing now. All of the studies showed that the higher education system had already undergone an extensive digitalization process long before the pandemic, and the language education had already been using tools specific to teaching and learning, such as Moodle, to support face-to-face teaching. So in May, if you recall, May 2020, those of us who were lucky enough to have most of our teaching materials in digital format available in a Moodle or any other virtual learning environment online, made this move to remote online teaching swiftly and much easier than colleagues who had their materials on hard copies, because they had to digitalize them. To conclude, this collection testifies to global language teaching efforts in higher education during the 2020 COVID-19 emergency period, and will serve, we trust, as a useful point of reference. Based on the collated evidence, we are proud to conclude that our profession rose magnificently to this specific challenge, and that we are confident that it will continue to thrive in many diverse educational and learning contexts. Now, I would like to emphasize that this is the end of our introductory study essay to the book signed by all the editors, and we debated at length the use of the word magnificently. Was it a bit too much to say that it was magnificently? But then we concluded that given all the effort and all the work that went into moving everything online for remote delivery to students who were away first time ever, we did all together as a profession rise to the occasion and did a splendid, a magnificent job that will take us into the future. Now, just to conclude with the question that I promised, rather than giving you a conclusion, proper conclusion, I hope you will consult the studies in the book, and that you will make up your own mind based on your own experience within your given context. But I would like to emphasize this question. The way we communicate is changing. I used to come to Florence to this conference 5, 6, I think, years in a row, but now I'm displaced, I'm remote, I'm online. We communicate in a different way. We are not in the same room as per usual in the conference. So obviously, the way we use language is changing, as we have seen from the presentation before mine, the colleague from Portugal, where students were preparing those beautiful videos, and also writing tasks. So language is changing. We are shifting. We are moving. So my question is: should the way we teach language change? If the way we communicate is changing, has changed, the way we use language has changed, should we not change the way we approach the teaching of languages? I will give you an example. Most jobs interviews these days are held online. I hope you in the audience did not have a job interview lately. You have secure jobs. But I have heard that those who did have job interviews, they were all online. So my question to you is, if your job interview tomorrow will be online, is it not better to teach and practice this relevant, very specific language skill online? So I will leave you with that thought, and just remind you that this is the publisher, Research Publishing Net, here. This is the book. It is available from that web page. It is 406 pages, and I trust that you will find a study that resembles your situation, whether culturally, academically, geographically, any which way, and that it will help you make sense of our own practice and guide your future choices. With this, I would like to conclude, and if you have any questions, I will be more than happy to try to answer them. Thank you.